Welcome back to Vanguard Fitness, my channel dedicated to natural, healthy bodybuilding. I'm very excited about today's video because it's the first time I record one of that kind, and I have wanted to do so for quite a while now, especially on the topic we're gonna talk about. So today's video is an answer to Basement Bodybuilding's latest installment of his top 10 lifts.
First lift I have stiff leg deadlift. The second lift, the military press. Number 3, chest supported T-bar row. Number 4, machine chest press. Next one's a crossbody rear delt fly. Number 6, a leg press. Number 7, dumbbell pullover. Number 8, pronated pull-ups. Number 9, the preacher curl. Number 10, the incline pushdown.
Thank you, Landon, for this quick summary of them all. It's a solid list, but it still doesn't change the fact that I have my own, and so it feels like a great opportunity to share it today. I also like the idea that this is more of a kind of dialogue rather than a reaction video. It's more just a matter of sharing different perspectives, which is one of the main reasons why I share on this platform in the first place. Now, when it comes to my own list, I have a few disclaimers before I start, so that you can follow along and see how it makes sense, irrespective of my biases and preferences. Number 1, there are a few machines and equipments on this list, and of course it is assumed that you can adjust them and make them fit you well for your morphology. Otherwise, a free weight counterpart would make more sense. Number 2, all these lifts I've been performing myself. I'm not gonna discuss lifts that I haven't tested or that I couldn't stick to, because then this list wouldn't feel sincere. As a matter of fact, all of these exercises are in my program at the moment. So it's basically part of my bread and butter, let's say. Number 3, and the last disclaimer, probably the most important one, is that Landon made his selection from the standpoint of a temporary minimalist approach, like if you don't have much time to train for a certain period of time. But in my case, it's more going to be about if I could only choose 10 exercises for the rest of my life to keep growing, which ones would I choose? And it's a tough exercise because I love the idea of having like a myriad of exercises in my roster. And without further ado, let's go to the list. And number 10 on the list, we are starting with the dumbbell Arnold raise. And you may say, what the hell Arnold raises? Well, it's basically the lateral raise, so shoulder exercise. But the way Arnold performed it, at least as we can see in pumping iron. And so it's basically going above shoulder level and turning your hands also a little bit. So you're neither pronated or in neutral position, but basically oblique. And so it's a little bit as if you were transitioning from a lateral raise to a Y raise. And I like it very much because, you know, I've been trying quite a few exercises for shoulders, and this one gives you an amazing pump. It's very good for shoulder health as well because you have this a little more of a explosive aspect to it and range of motion to it. So it's a great movement to cultivate this mobility of your shoulder, which is crucial for bodybuilding, and you will see it's a recurring theme in my choices. It's also a fun movement to perform. You can do it standing and cheat a little bit with some body English, and you know, it feels a bit like beastly. But you can also do it a little bit more strict, sitting on the bench and making sure you don't have this kind of oomph going on. It's also great as a warm-up or as a finisher. And I can tell you, I've never felt my delts burning so hard on a movement. You cannot quite compare it to lateral raises with a cable, even though I still like lateral raises with cables. But here with the dumbbell, it's a little bit more natural to have a certain rhythm to it. As a beginner, I was not doing it, actually. But, you know, then I tried it and just realized it's amazing. And I understood why they were a staple in the golden era. And I think when you look at Arnold, something that strikes me is that you can see he was going, for example, very deep on his pec flies. He has this full ROM mobility when it comes to his shoulder training, like the full range of motion on his front raises, which is also amazing shoulder mobility exercise that I do. And I'm pretty sure this was instrumental to him developing big pecs. And I think this is an overarching rule in bodybuilding. Whenever you can be capable and strong at something, and especially like maybe a weaker position for most people, it's gonna be worth it for the rest of your training. Okay, then number 9 we have the rack pull below the knee. And this one is probably the one I hesitated the most about because my first instinct was to put Romanian deadlift, and you would be quite surprised maybe not to see the Romanian deadlift on the list, because it's such a great bang for your buck exercise. But here, yeah, I decided for the rack pull below the knee. Why? Because I think you get mostly the same benefits, but you just shift a little bit the emphasis to the upper traps. And I was struggling to find a way to have some upper traps and neck work in this list. I didn't want to use a slot just for neck training. And yeah, I think with a rack pull below the knee, you have more potential to, over time, over the years, have kind of big upper traps and necks from it, while still training the whole posterior chain. You just get less hamstrings as a trade-off, but you still do get some along with the glutes and the erectors. So I think it's also a great bang for your buck exercise. Besides, you can also do some variations and place the focus on different muscle groups. For instance, I like to do it for high reps and bending my lower back, really focusing on lifting with the lower back and my erectors. So I really bend and unbend, and I get a crazy pump with that in my back, in the erectors, which is an amazing feeling the first time you get it. If you do it at the Smith machine like I do, you can play with the pins, you can put the bar a bit lower and it's going to be closer to a Romanian deadlift in that case, or maybe put it closer to the knee level and put more weight and refocus more on the heavy stretch on your traps. So it's also versatile, and of course you also have the added benefit of having some forearm and grip development from this lift, which we cannot also allocate a slot for. Number 8, I think, yeah, that one I have in common with Landon, if I remember correctly. Machine chest press. Why do I prefer the machine chest press over, let's say, the good old barbell bench press? Well, first of all, I train alone, so, you know, I don't have to worry about my life if I fail on the barbell bench for a lack of spotter. Then I have pretty long arms, so something that works pretty well for me is to have a pressing path that actually goes more like a decline, and on a machine you can often do it if you adjust the seat, so that's often what I do. You can also often have a neutral grip with the endos, which tends to be easier on the wrist, and also it may be easier to isolate your pecs on it because you can't help yourself with the leg drive. And yeah, overall that's also just, you know, plain and simple my personal experience. I have a very good pump and stimulus in my pecs whenever I use at least my machines, the ones I have available to me at my gym. But yeah, as I said in the disclaimer, if it's not your case, obviously the machine chest press wouldn't be a good choice. And why not the dumbbell press? Well, after a certain weight, the dumbbells get a bit awkward to lift. It becomes a whole logistics, and you also have more risks of injuring yourself in this case. So as a long-term option, I just feel like a machine can be better. But yeah, this is probably the most controversial here on my list, I guess, because you also need a machine that is good enough so that it has a big stack of weights. Okay, number 7, we have the seated French press. Why do I like this one over other extensions for the triceps? Well, I like the fact, first of all, that it's time tested. It's been the staple of many very successful natural lifters with big arms. It was one of the main triceps builder of Retchmark, for instance. I like the fact that it's straightforward and you can also adjust your elbow positions to see what is more natural for you. You can flare out more like that or go like more like this and it's gonna work. I like the stretch. The stretch is crazy on this. You have to find a setup where the bench doesn't go up to your skull, but more like, ideally like mid-back, let's say. And so you can lean back and it's gonna be easier on your elbows in that case. And also you will get a good stretch for your rib cage, almost like a pullover. And you will see that this is a theme in my exercise selection. And this is not something discussed usually with this exercise, but it definitely feels like it can be part of the equation for expanding your ribcage as well. Yeah, as a final little touch, like most old school lifts, it looks badass. And this applies as well to the next lift on the list, because number 6 is the L-sit chin-up. So why do I like the L-sit besides it being super badass? Well, first of all, compared to a normal chin-up, it's gonna stimulate your abs quite a lot, so some ab work without dedicating a slot to it. So that's already a benefit of this variation. You're also gonna bias a little bit more your lower lats, which is a bit hard sometimes. And of course it's harder than regular chin-ups. So when you have already a certain level, let's say 20 chin-ups, it's a nice way to keep some difficulty to it without loading it. And yeah, before you can do 10s and 10s, you will already have a pretty good back. Besides, if you reach that level, you can still weight it. But yeah, you will be pretty jacked by the time you have to do that to keep progressing. And just like regular chin-ups, you can also just do some small tweaks and variations to put some emphasis on some other muscles. I like to do something like using towels to grip. It makes it much harder, and you train your grip and your forearms a lot with that as well, even more than regular chin-up. You can also do like a close grip, so you're gonna work a bit more your biceps with it, even though I wouldn't say it's a biceps builder, but you know, if you wanna get as much volume as you can for your biceps, that's something you can put in there. So yeah, L-sit chin-up. Now we are at the number 6 and we are getting very closer and closer to lifts that I love, and that's one of them. Something also worth mentioning is that it's harder to cheat. You can't really keep and just turn the exercise into a circus show when you have to keep your legs straight in front of you, so that's also a benefit. And of course another benefit, just like when you weight your pull-ups or chin-ups, is that when you do regular pull-ups and chin-ups, it feels like super easy and you're like lightweight. So yeah, that was number 6, and I see it's getting darker and darker, and maybe you start not seeing me, so I'm gonna turn on some light. Maybe it's too bright now. No, okay, that's good. So number 5, we have the dumbbell arm blaster wall curls. That's a mouthful. So basically a dumbbell curl against a wall, or in my case I like to do it against the cable stack, so I don't have the whole wall against my scapula that is just like in the middle of my back, just to have a, you know, a back support to stay still. And the arm blaster, if you have access to one, I really love it. I made a video about it. If you want to check, I will put a flashcard, you know, appearing up there on the video somewhere. So why the arm blaster and the dumbbells instead of the barbell or an easy curl bar? Well, you see, the idea here would be to get something that is as close as possible to a preacher curl, but that is not a preacher curl. And why would we want to do that? Well, because maybe the preacher curl doesn't suit you in the long term. In my case, I have a valgus elbow, so barbell curls, once I reached certain weights, it was really becoming excruciating. I had the, how is it called, forearm shin splits, basically. Yeah, so it's like you get a very strong pain here, and it lingers even after the lift. And so I realized for the long term I should probably switch to dumbbells, or at least like single arm exercises. So that's when I started to do more like Bayesian curls. Bayesian curls are great, but they have, I would say, an expiry date. It gets awkward also after you start to use certain weights. You are just, you know, dragged behind. It becomes really tough not to push with your shoulders as well. So another of my choices have been incline curls, which I love, and they could have made it to this list. But I decided on the arm blaster with the dumbbell curls because it just feels more like a good long-term choice in terms of standardizing your form. You know, you are locked in, you cannot cheat, and that's even more true if you just put like a back support. So there's just no escape. It's your biceps that has to do the work and nothing else. So I like that one very much. It's also quite versatile. I like to do it sometimes without the back support with lighter loads, and I do like higher reps and a little bit more of a rhythm like this. You know, it's nice to warm up, get a good pump. But yeah, you can also do it heavy. That's what I like with it. So like 4, 5 to 8 reps kind of rep range, and really focus on grinding this biceps isolation. Okay, then we have on number 4 the behind the neck Smith press. So this one might be a controversial as well. Some people would never do this behind the neck Smith press. So why is it great? Again, like I said, for the lateral raises, Arnold style. If some exercises puts you in a weak position, if you don't have the mobility for it, it doesn't mean you don't have to do it. On the contrary, it means you have a weakness and you have to work on it. So I've been doing behind the neck press from day one, I believe, and guess what? I never have any trouble with shoulder mobility in my exercises, and it's very useful. Everybody knows that shoulder health is probably the first thing that goes down when you bodybuild, so you want to cultivate it, and so you want to get strong at it. The point is to be clever about it, to build tissue capacity and, go with very small increments over time. Be conservative. You start maybe with the empty bar, or if it's too much for you, you start with the pink little plastic dumbbells, I don't know. You start there and you microload, you add reps to a point you can do 15, 20, 25 reps even. And then you add some micro loading and boom, you will have access to one of the best shoulder exercises there is. This was a staple for most bodybuilders for decades before there was fear-mongering about it. So the best shoulders in natural bodybuilding history, they were built with some overhead pressing, including the behind the neck press. Again, if you take someone like Reg Park, he built his shoulders almost exclusively with variations of vertical pressing. And why do I prefer the behind the neck one? Well, it's the one pure vertical press you can perform. And compared to the overhead press, you put less emphasis on the front delt and more on the middle delt, which is more advantageous when it comes to the V-taper. And also not to develop imbalances, because the front delts, they tend to work already in your other presses. It also works your traps, basically a lot of muscles in your upper back. It's very stable because since it's like a vertical press, the opposing force is the floor. And the way I do it is even more stable. I like to do it on the Smith machine, sitting on the bench, so I don't have to focus too much on bracing. And most importantly, I have the little safeties, so I can do something that I call putting my foot in the door. That's something I like to do quite a lot. And that means putting some weights that can allow me to do maybe 4 to 5 reps, and that I might not dare using if it was like the free weight variation. So yeah, that's one of my staples, one of my favorite exercises. And now we're gonna go to the top 3. So the third one is the chest supported neutral grip T-bar row. So why do I like it so much to place it number 3? Well, of course, the chest support makes it much easier to just focus on training your back and not having to deal with the lower back management in terms of programming, but also when you are doing the exercise. Of course, very stable, so it's a good aspect to have in a lift for longevity and standardization of your technique. It's very safe to fail on it. You can easily try to do some rest pose, drop sets. When you use the neutral grip, you're going to put more emphasis on your lats, but your whole back musculature is going to work. Your traps, your rear delts, which I didn't allocate a spot for on this list, but thanks to the T-bar row and also the 2 other shoulder exercises I've placed, I think they might have, let's say, decent stimulus at least. And so yeah, I think it's a very solid back exercise. It's my favorite one, along with chin-up variations or pull-up variations. Those have been my 2 staples in terms of back training: vertical pull, horizontal pull, and my back is probably one of my stronger points. So if you are interested in this lift in particular, I've made 2 videos about it, so I invite you to go have a look somewhere there if I put a card when I edit the video. And now let's go to number 2. So it's gonna be the breathing Smith squat. I also called it the Doom squat. If you know what the breathing squat is, you already know why I call it Doom squat. So what's not to like about this lift? I mean, it's working your whole system. Even your traps get a pump from just holding very heavy weight for like 3 minutes on your back. You're gonna work on your lungs capacity, your mental fortitude, which is not to be underrated, of course. So it's like great carryover. I would even argue it's like a carryover to your normal squats, which may sound a bit weird, but the thing is that I don't really see this exercise as a pure leg exercise, but I make sure that I'm gonna breathe heavily. and I'm gonna lack oxygen. And might not be the case for you, but for me, it's easy to see if it works. I start to feel some tingling in my arms. Whereas when I perform it with less weight and try to focus more on, let's say, ass to grass squat, so to have more of a good hypertrophic stimulus on the legs, I don't really get that. But still, I do get some leg development from it. And yeah, of course, the main point of the breathing squat, besides all the good stuff I've already mentioned, is the ribcage expansion. And I really believe that the ribcage expansion is one of the missing links for most natural lifters. I was thinking of a metaphor to try to illustrate why, and the one that emerged was that when you add muscle on your frame, you're trying to make like a work of art, an epic work of art, and you are trying to add some paint. So it can be worth your time to try to get as big of a canvas as you can get. And that's what expanding the ribcage does for you. You expand the canvas. You leave a bigger frame so that you can put the paint on it and have your epic work of art. It's a big part of what made the silver era and golden era of physiques so aesthetic and giving them this superhero kind of shape. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to make it a staple in a program. It's also just one of those lifts that when you do it, you know it works. You know, you just can't escape the stimulus. Even if you've been doing it for a long time, when you go home after a session with breathing squats, you just feel that your body has gone under a very strong challenge and you feel very hungry. You feel like your body needs resources and it's gonna make it grow. Another benefit is that once you practice this lift, no other lift feels really hard anymore. I mean, they are hard, of course, because you put a certain weight to it, so you know, you try to go to failure, all this kind of good stuff, but there are less and less exercises that can feel threatening whatsoever, because to be under the heavy bar for 3 minutes and doing the breathing squats, like nothing compares to it. And of course, if you know a little bit about the breathing squat and my channel, you probably already guessed maybe which one will be the number one in my top 10. And that's the barbell pullover, for many reasons, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be there. So I have to really think where I begin, you know. So yeah, first of all, the superset with the breathing squat. You see, that's also why I put them second and first, because the pullover is reinforced this ribcage expansion, but there are also many other benefits I love about it. So you also have hypertrophic benefits to it, and for all of the, let's say, most important muscles of your upper body. So it's gonna work your lats, it's gonna work your triceps, it's gonna work your pecs, it's gonna stimulate your serratus, which is a very aesthetic muscle to have as well. And you can more or less bias each of these muscles depending on the technique you choose. So it's very adaptable to your needs. It can work them all, more or less. It can be really much like an upper body squat, just like the dips. But on the contrary of the dips, here you also have the lats. It also cultivates this shoulder mobility I've been talking about quite a lot in this top 10. I've been doing, again, pullovers from day one and never had any shoulder issue, thanks to it probably. So yeah, it's a great tool to develop your upper body overall. It was even used in the past as the upper body strength test. And what might be less obvious here in my choice is why the barbell over the dumbbell. And yeah, actually I made a mistake on that one, which I will correct when I edit the video. It should be the easy bar, not the barbell. But the idea is quite similar anyway. It's that, you know, with the dumbbell it gets clunky, it gets awkward once you start to reach certain weights. And yeah, also the easy bar, just better for the wrist. For the long-term progression, it just makes more sense. And so yeah, that was my list. I would be very curious to see what are your comments on it. So far I've had great success with all of these lifts, so I hope they can help you as well. There are many others I like, of course. So yeah, I invite you to check my content, both past and future. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment. Tell me what you think about my list. I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.